Democracy is not a machine that runs on votes alone. It runs on trust. Trust that your voice will be heard. Trust that the losing side will accept the result. Trust that the process, however imperfect, is fundamentally fair. When that trust is abused, when institutions are captured by oligarchs or worse, a kakistocracy of the least capable and most corrupt, elections become a grotesque theatre. The ballot remains, but the choice vanishes. In such moments, citizens reach for unusual tools. One of the most revealing is the satirical candidate. Across democratic history, people have elected rhinos, beer lovers, and comedians to public office. These are not jokes, they are diagnostics. They are a higher notch above the NOTA, none of the above vote. A collective theatrical scream saying, "Your system is absurd, and we will prove it by winning with something even more absurd." Consider kakistocracy, a female black rhinoceros from the Sao Paulo Zoo. In 1959, disgusted by municipal corruption, voters launched a write-in campaign for the rhino. She received over 100,000 votes, more than any legitimate party. She could not take office, but kakistocracy vote entered Brazilian Portuguese as a term for a protest so total that it elects a wild animal. Then there is John Nahr, an Icelandic comedian who founded the Best Party in 2010 as a satire of Reykjavik's establishment. His promises included a polar bear for the zoo and free towels at public pools. He won 34.7% of the vote and became mayor. The Polish Beer Lovers Party won 16 parliamentary seats in 1991, until reality swallowed the joke. Germany's Die Partei, run by Satirical magazine editors, took 2 seats in the 2019 European Parliament. None of these victories were mistakes. They were verdicts. The common thread is a collapse of trust. People do not vote for a rhino because they believe in rhino governance. They vote for a rhino because they believe that any change would be for the better and that a perfect substitute is not a prerequisite for change. Once the system has lost all moral authority, the absurd becomes rational. Which brings us to the cockroach. In India, the term has been weaponized. Certain political actors, most visibly from the BJP, have used cockroach as a pejorative for poor Muslims, often prefixed with Rohingya or Ghuspaitiya, infiltrator. It is a deliberate dehumanization, painting an entire community as unwanted pests to be exterminated. But the cockroach is a dual symbol. Yes, it is a scavenger, but it is also the ultimate survivor, fastidious, resilient, capable of thriving after nuclear fallout. The public, particularly the marginalized, recognizes itself in that contradiction. Treated like cockroaches by the system, they survive like cockroaches anyway. It is in this context that recent remarks attributed to CJI Suryakant, allegedly using cockroach in a dismissive or pejorative manner, feel less like an isolated lapse and more like a Freudian slip of an entitled mindset. When a Supreme Court judge, even unintentionally, echoes the dehumanizing vocabulary of a kakistocratic ruling class, it exposes the depth of institutional capture. The guardian of the Constitution becomes a mirror of the very rot satire seeks to expose. Trust, already fragile, fractures further. This is why the satirical vote is not a degeneration of democracy. It is democracy's last honest reflex. When people campaign for or vote for a deliberately absurd candidate, they are not abandoning the system. They are showing that the system has already abandoned them. They are using its own mechanics to make visible its farce. Imagine, as a thought experiment, a minor election, a village panchayat, a municipal ward. A group of disillusioned citizens files nomination papers under a banner, perhaps the Cockroach Janta Party. They mask the identity of the candidate until the very end. On the day of counting, they present a live cockroach, not a human, a small, scurrying, indestructible insect. Let us say it wins by a landslide because everyone understands the joke and the fury behind it. What happens next? The legal machinery scrambles. Is a cockroach a person under the Representation of the People Act? Does it have a right to contest? Does it hold assets, file affidavits, swear an oath? The very act of asking these questions with a straight face would expose the emptiness of procedure without legitimacy. The system would have to annul the election, but in doing so, it would confess, "We cannot tolerate your mockery, but we can tolerate your misery." That confession is the point. The cockroach candidate would not govern. It would not pass budgets or build roads. But it would do something more important. It would prove that the process had become so alien to the people that even a pest was preferable to the available human alternatives. It would tell every disillusioned citizen, "You are not crazy, the system is." We must resist the temptation to dismiss such acts as nihilistic. Satirical elections have a long and noble lineage. The UK's monster-raving loony party never won a seat, but it gave us the idea of a pedestrian crossing for ducks. The Rhinoceros Party of Canada promised to repeal the law of gravity. They lost, but they expanded the imagination of what politics could be. Winning, however, changes the equation. When a rhino or a beer party or a cockroach actually wins, the system is no longer merely ridiculous. It is dead. To restore trust, you do not need perfect leaders. You need leaders who do not treat citizens as vermin. You need judges who do not slip into the language of bigotry. You need elections where a vote against the establishment is not forced to become a vote for a cockroach. Until then, the roach will keep winning. Not because it is a good candidate, but because it is the only honest reflection of a system that has lost its soul. And the people, in their survival wisdom, will keep voting for it and waiting for the day when a real choice returns.
देश दुनिया की रखी खबर
हर रोज हर शाम
कानो कान
सुनते रहें द लेंस पॉडकास्ट।
रही अपडेट लेंस के साथ।